Welcome back to Thursday's Daily Rundown with me, Dan Morfitt. Zia and Eddie are still here, ready to probe more of the stories of the day?
Absolutely. Sorry,
I love the thumbs up there. Yeah, Zia says absolutely.
Yes. 2 thumbs up.
Right, our next story now is about staff joining the BBC. From now on, they'll be asked about their socio-economic background as part of a bid to increase diversity at the corporation. Candidates will be asked if they were entitled to free school meals and if their parents attended university. Anonymous job applications will also be extended for core roles. The plans come after the BBC faced pressure from ministers to increase numbers of staff from underrepresented backgrounds. This followed a government report from 2014 that found that more than a quarter of senior BBC staff had attended public school. So is the BBC right to adopt this? Eddie, what do you think?
I think that there is an issue with diversity in the workplace across all companies, and in a way that you're not, like when companies hire, big companies, they're not necessarily aware of prejudice they may have when you look for applications and that, but also it feels quite clunky. And I think we're in a period of time where it's like when political correctness is coming to grips with it, and we still are in a way, it feels very early noughties this. Like, we're going to do a check to make sure that we've not got a guy like you, because if we do, sorry mate, can't get you for the job. It's very uncomfortable.
Even if they're the best person for the job?
Well, this is it. I mean, the thing with the story is that at no point does it say what they're going to use that information for. It might just be that they're going to gather that info, do nothing about it, or gather it and then they're going to have to choose somebody to fill some quota, which isn't necessarily going to make the best quality of work from that. I don't know.
Zia, did you get free school milk?
Milk probably at some stage, because growing up in the 70s it was pretty much free everything, wasn't it, at school? So education as well, which was quite handy. But I don't know, I like the idea of anonymised applications, because there are many people, and you can appreciate from a Muslim point of view, a lot of younger Muslims are like, hey, once I put Muhammad down on my CV, I know that that's the end of my prospects. And so I think anonymised applications is one thing, but how much you actually gain by finding out if somebody's had free school meals, and how many people are going to be willing to admit it genuinely? How many people say, yeah, I had loads of free school meals just because they think there's a job at the end? So I don't think it's necessarily been as well thought through as it could have been.
It's one of those things as well. Everybody has a little white lie on their CV. I don't know if a barrister does. That might be bad, but everybody has a little white lie. But people got to start putting had free school meals, had milk. Yeah. It seems a weird thing. Where does positive discrimination stop and a true meritocracy starts, where people are judged on their abilities rather than maybe the colour of their skin?
We're not... The thing is, we're not in a world where the colour of someone's skin doesn't matter, unfortunately. It still plays a part. There is still an issue within society with that. And so how do you deal with that fact? How do you deal with the fact that racism still exists and sexism still exists and classism and ageism? These are things that are still permeating our society in ways that people aren't aware. And how do you figure that out? And so you get sort of these things that are done in earnest that are a bit clunky and a bit clumsy, and say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to find out where they're from, and if they went to a fancy school, we're not going to have them in, but maybe we will. We'll have, how many should we have? 2? Is 2 appropriate? I feel 2 is too many. It's, when you try to formalise something that's very ambiguous.
When it goes from that to becoming a quota, then that sounds wrong. Zia, are the BBC damned if they do and damned if they don't with something like this?
Probably. I mean, I don't envy them being in that position. But I suppose it's also a question of these positions that they're seeking to, let's say, fill. At what level are those positions? Because, when it comes to the directors and the chief execs and the big boys, the statistics are that there's a disproportionate amount of them who are from public schools. Now, is that going to remain the same? Or are we going to say, well, no, even at that level, things are going to change? Because I imagine that's going to take a lot longer to change at that level. The other thing about positive discrimination, I think people have to remember it. And because even to me, it sounds like, it doesn't sound like a good thing, and all this affirmative action and people getting what appears to be an unfair leg up. But then you think, we don't have a level playing field. So we need to level the playing field first, and that's perhaps the issue. How do we level it to begin with, so that thereafter we can certainly try to get a true meritocracy?
And sometimes a positive discrimination sort of works against the individual, whether they're Muslim, black, disabled, from Northern Ireland. People think that they've only got to that position because of certain parts of their background, which might not be the case.
Absolutely, you're the token black person or the token woman in an organisation, and those people are just as hindered in many respects as they were before they got the job.
What would you like to see the BBC of the future to look like? Because by the sounds of it, they're going to be changing other departments in there. They're changing into a different organisation. We're not just watching television anymore. We're watching on our mobiles. We're not just listening to radio live all the time. We're listening to it in little compartments. What do you think?
I'd like for it to be there. That's my first thing. Let's keep that knocking around. But also, I don't know. It's difficult to say what's going to happen to it, because it offers so many things for so many different people, and it's so massive. The World Service is something that serves not just Britain. It serves every sort of country outside of Britain that the BBC broadcasts to. The World Service provides that. But then at the same time now, there's BBC Three for young people, and there's 5 Live for sports and news coverage specifically. It's such a wide organisation, and we're living in a time where organisations are shrinking and being made to shrink. And so it's curious. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with it. And I hope that it maintains what it does, because I think it's one of the greatest things we have in this country.
And Zia, would you like to hear and see on the BBC more black, Asian, minority voices that are there because they're British?
Absolutely. I mean, because they reflect our society. Because there's undoubtedly a lot of talent out there, and to be fair to the BBC, I've always regarded them as the best of a bad bunch, because some of the others, their approach to media leaves a lot to be desired. But I suppose the BBC, as Eddie says, being so vast, inevitably you're not going to get the same level, the same quality all the way across the board. And so there are certain sections that you think, oh wow, they provide a great service. Others you think, well, that's a bit ropey, isn't it? And I'm sure that's a lot to do with what their budgets are in respective departments. But considering they've got those difficulties to overcome, the sheer size of the institution, I think they do a great job.
Step in the right direction there from the BBC. Our last story for now is everybody aware of this? Happy Ed Balls Day. Happy Ed Balls Day, everyone.
Hooray.
Who knew that 5 years ago a Twitter fail would still be remembered right now? And now Ed Balls and his family are joining in the celebrations. It all started on the 28th of April 2011 when Ed Balls was the Labour Shadow Chancellor. He was urged by his aide to look on Twitter for articles mentioning his name. But instead of doing a simple search, he tweeted his own name in error. Ed Balls. Since then, on the 28th of April every year, Twitter rejoices in the madness of the internet's gaffe and marks Ed Balls Day. Now here are producer Emmy's favourite tweets from the day. This is beautiful. Let's all celebrate together as we look at the Ed Balls montage. Happy Ed Balls Day, everyone. Never forget. Of course, it snows on Ed Balls Day. That's a really important thing. Oh, the best one ever. The 5th Ed Balls Day. Beautiful. I think it's magical. As Ed Balls Day draws to a close, his wife, MP Yvette Cooper, has been urging him to join in. And here's a cake she got made as well. Oh, that's the Twitter on a cake. So, Zia, how did you celebrate Ed Balls Day?
I must confess, I didn't get round to partying the way I normally would for Ed Balls Day, because it's appropriate to mark such an important occasion. But I do think that this event is going to get bigger every year, and we are going to have bookies who are going to be asking, what are the chances of a white Ed Balls Day this year? And these are important considerations. So I think you'll find that this is not going to go away. And in Chambers today, was there a lot of buzz about Ed Balls Day, or were you all working on so many cases? There was the inevitable buzz at court, and I'm not sure whether it was because people were nervous about their caseload and getting shouted at by judges, or whether it was probably more likely the fact that it was such an auspicious occasion. Eddie, Ed Balls Day, to you, what does it signify? What's the message?
There's so much. I mean, I think it's just nice that we have one day of the year where we sort of all get together and we rally around. You know, I love it. You know, first thing in the morning, it's Ed Balls Day, it's Ed Balls Day. I run down the stairs, I look, and has he been? He's been, and my socks have been filled with photos of Ed Balls.
Oh, it's magical, isn't it? And it's one of those days.
It's for the kids.
It's for the kids.
That's what makes it so
But
special.
it brings us all together. It doesn't matter what your religion, what your colour, what creed. Ed Balls Day is a day of togetherness.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about, and we forget it so often, that it's all about the connections we make in life, it's all about the relationships, and that's really just getting around and celebrating Ed Balls. That's what we're all about.
Zia, do you think that, I know we've only been celebrating Ed Balls Day for 5 years, do you think it's becoming too commercial now?
There's a danger, as with any such event, that money takes over. But at the moment, it's got that authentic feel to it yet, where the children are genuinely happy, and it's not about what they're going to get on Ed Balls Day. The danger, of course, is in the future. Once the big corporations get involved, then that's when you start to find that all you want to do is wake up and celebrate, and be happy. And yet you switch on the telly and they're trying to sell you more Ed Balls paraphernalia.
Yeah. Eddie, do you think it'll ever get to the stage of being really Americanised and it becomes like Eddie Balls Day?
Look, I don't want it to happen, and I'm not asking for it to happen, but I'm just saying we need to be aware of it. It could happen, and we need to make sure that we keep the spirit of Ed Balls alive regardless of it. We don't want Ed Balls everywhere.
No, because you don't know how to juggle them.
No way.
Zia, can I just have an Ed Balls from you, please? Ed Balls.
Ed Balls.
Eddie, your namesake almost.
Ed Balls.
And a happy Ed Balls Day to everybody out there. Hope you had a fantastic Ed Balls Day. Magical. That's all we have time for in this part of the show. Next on the Daily Rundown, we'll have some very old socks. I'm as curious as you as to what the heck all of this is about. Find out more after the break.